Rowan Aldgate was 41 years old, a licensed aircraft mechanic with 17 years of certification, and the man responsible for keeping the turbines turning on every regional jet that passed through Kelowna International. He was also, as of 6 months ago, the man who made his daughter's school lunch at 5:30 in the morning because she liked her sandwich cut on a diagonal and would not eat it any other way. Her name was Ellie. She was 8. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness, and she had begun, recently, to draw pictures of airplanes in her school notebooks. Not because she had any particular interest in flight, but because she wanted to understand what her father did all day. Rowan did not talk much about what he did all day. The morning that changed things began the way difficult mornings always begin, quietly, without announcement, with no sign at all that the hours ahead would be different from any other. He dropped Ellie at school at 8:15. She turned back once at the gate, not to wave, but to look at him in the particular way she had. Assessing, measuring, deciding he was all right, and then she walked through without looking back again. He sat in the truck for a moment after she disappeared, the engine running. It was October in the Okanagan, and the mountains to the east had gone the color of ash. He pulled out of the school lot and drove toward the airport. He was 40 minutes into his shift when his supervisor, a heavyset man named Glenn who managed people the way a bad driver manages traffic, always slightly too late, pulled him off the turbine inspection he was halfway through and told him to go to the administration building. "What for?" Rowan said. "Fleet services request. Someone wants a mechanic on a private consult. I'm in the middle of a Stage 3 inspection. Vickers can finish it." Rowan looked at Glenn for a moment. Vickers was 26 and had been certified for 14 months. The inspection was on a Bombardier Q400 that was scheduled to carry 230 people to Vancouver at noon. "I'll finish the inspection first," Rowan said. Glenn started to say something. Rowan had already turned back to the engine. He completed the inspection at 9:47. He flagged 2 items, wrote them up properly, handed the report to the duty officer, and then walked to the administration building because there was nothing else he could do. The woman waiting for him was not what he expected. He had expected someone from fleet operations, a logistics manager, maybe, or a procurement officer. Instead, he found a woman in her late 30s sitting behind a temporary desk in a borrowed office, with 3 open laptops in front of her and a look on her face that suggested she had already made several decisions this morning that she was not entirely certain about. Her name, he would learn later, was Dr. Sylvie Marchetti. She ran the Canadian operations of an aerospace engineering firm called Vantage Structural, which contracted with regional carriers across British Columbia and Alberta. She had a PhD in materials science from the University of Waterloo. She had been in Kelowna for 9 hours and had not slept in 32. She did not stand when he came in. "You're the mechanic," she said. "Rowan Aldgate," he said. 17 years, type-rated on Q-Series and -8. Glenn said you had a consult. She studied him for a moment with the particular attention of someone who has been lied to recently and is recalibrating everyone accordingly. "Sit down," she said. He sat. She turned one of the laptops toward him. On the screen was a technical report, a fatigue analysis on a composite wing spar with stress distribution charts and a failure projection curve, the kind of document that was normally produced by a team of structural engineers over several weeks. "This report," she said, "was submitted to Transport Canada last Thursday. It cleared a modification on the wing assembly of 4 aircraft in our fleet. Modification was scheduled to begin yesterday." Rowan looked at the report. He did not say anything. "Yesterday morning," she continued, "one of my engineers flagged an anomaly in the baseline data. The load assumptions in Section 4 don't correspond to the operational parameters of the aircraft in question." She paused, "which means either the model is wrong or the data was changed." "How experienced is your engineer?" 8 years. She's careful. She doesn't make mistakes like this." Rowan looked at the chart again. Something in his peripheral attention had already caught the problem. The kind of noticing that happens before conscious thought, the way a mechanic's eyes learn to find what doesn't belong. He leaned forward and studied the load curve in Section 4. These numbers, he said, are from a standard medium hull configuration, not a regional turboprop. Yes, someone substituted the baseline dataset. Yes, when was this report filed? Last Thursday. It carries the signatures of 3 Vantage engineers, including my chief analyst. Rowan looked up, and your chief analyst is saying he signed it. Something shifted in her expression. My chief analyst has been unreachable since Friday afternoon. The room went quiet. Outside, a ground vehicle reversed across the tarmac, its warning tone faint through the window. What's the modification? Rowan said. A composite patch repair on the lower wing skin, forward of the main spar. Standard enough procedure. But if the stress analysis used the wrong baseline, the patch specification may be inadequate for the actual load cycles these aircraft are flying. How many hours on the airframes? Between 14,000 and 18,000. Rowan did not say anything to that. He knew what those numbers meant in the context of a compromised spar repair. So did she. That was why she was sitting in a borrowed office with 3 laptops and eyes that hadn't closed in 32 hours. Why are you talking to me? He said. This is a structural engineering problem. I'm a line mechanic. You wrote the anomaly report on CFKRW in 2019, she said. He looked at her. The wing skin delamination on the Q400 that the regional carrier's own engineers signed off as within tolerance, she continued. You flagged it anyway. Filed a formal report with Transport Canada over your employer's objection. The aircraft was taken out of service. The delamination was found to be progressing at 3 times the projected rate. He remembered that. He remembered the conversation with the regional chief engineer who had told him, with the specific impatience of a man who considers mechanics to be a category of tool, that his job was to fix things, not to evaluate things. He remembered filing the report anyway. How do you know about that? He said. Because I was the materials consultant on the Transport Canada investigation afterward, she said. I read your report. It was the most precise anomaly documentation I've seen from a non-engineer. You understood what the delamination pattern meant before the structural analysis was complete. Rowan was quiet for a moment. What do you need from me? He said. I need someone who can look at these 4 aircraft and tell me whether the modification that's already been started. Work began on the first airframe yesterday morning before we caught this. Compromised the structure. My engineers are in Vancouver. I can't wait for them to fly here, and I need someone who's been inside these aircraft, who knows how they actually behave, not just how the model says they should. He thought about Ellie, who would be done school at 3:15. He thought about the sandwich he had cut on a diagonal at 5:30 this morning. I'll need access to all 4 airframes, he said. And I need the original modification spec, not the one in the report, the one your engineers were actually working from before this. I can get you that, and I need Glenn to sign off on my time. This isn't in my current scope of work, and I won't have it come back on me later. I'll speak to your operations director directly. Glenn's above my operations director. She looked at him. For a moment something shifted in the efficiency of her expression, not warmth exactly, but a recognition of something. I'll speak to whoever I need to speak to, she said. He stood up. When do you want to start? 20 minutes ago, she said. He found the problem on the second aircraft. It was not where the modification had been applied. It was adjacent to it, a region of the lower wing skin that the patch repair had stressed slightly differently than predicted, because the actual load history of this specific airframe was not what the substituted data set had assumed. A mechanic who had not spent years reading the particular fatigue signatures of these aircraft, the way a Q-series under Okanagan operational conditions aged differently than one flying the coast, the moisture differentials, the thermal cycling, would have looked at it and seen nothing, or would have seen something and not known what they were seeing. Rowan crouched under the wing in the hangar and studied the area with a flashlight and a 10-power loop. The skin surface had the right color. The fastener patterns were correctly spaced. But there was a shadow in the composite, a faint variation in surface reflectance that shouldn't be there. And when he ran his fingertip across it, he felt what he had suspected. A microbuckle, barely 3 millimeters long, that represented the earliest stage of a process that would accelerate. He photographed it. He measured it. He wrote it down. Then he went and found Sylvie, who was in the hangar office on the phone, and he showed her what he had found. She looked at the photographs. She looked at his notes. She asked 3 technical questions, and he answered all 3 without hesitation. Then she was quiet for a long moment. "How long?" she said. "On current duty cycles." The crack would reach the primary spar in somewhere between 40 and 60 flight hours, maybe less. The load data substitution underestimated the bending moment by about 18%. That's not a safety margin. That's a failure timeline. Yes, she put the photographs down on the desk. "I need you to document everything," she said. "Full inspection protocol. I'm grounding all 4 aircraft pending structural review. That'll cost your client carriers substantially." "Yes, it will. They won't be happy." "No, they won't." She said both of these things in the tone of someone who has already run the calculation and arrived at the only answer that mattered. "One more thing," Rowan said. She looked at him. "The report that was filed with Transport Canada, the substituted data, that's not an oversight. That's deliberate. Someone changed specific values in a specific section to clear a specific modification, and your chief analyst went unreachable the same week the report was filed. I know. That means whoever did this knew your analyst's login, or had access to the filing system, or my analyst did it," she said. She said it quietly, as if she had been holding it in her mouth for some time, and was only now allowing herself to say it aloud. "His name is Aldrich Pemberton. He's been with Vantage for 11 years, and I've been trying to reach him since Friday, and his phone goes straight to voicemail, and his wife says she hasn't seen him since Thursday morning." The hangar was large and cold. Somewhere outside, a turboprop was running up its engines for departure. "You need to file with Transport Canada," Rowan said, "and you need to do it today. Not as a precautionary measure, as a report of suspected data falsification. That triggers a full investigation. Yes, it could end my company." Rowan looked at her steadily. "An aircraft with a failing wing spar could end a lot more than your company." The silence between them lasted exactly as long as it needed to. Then she picked up her phone and made the call. The investigation took 11 days. Rowan was deposed twice. Once by Transport Canada's aviation safety investigators, once by the RCMP detachment that took over the criminal side of the inquiry. He gave the same account both times, in the same language, without embellishment. He had found what he had found. He had documented what he had documented. He had told the truth about what it meant. Aldrich Pemberton was located on the 9th day, in a motel in Penticton, 45 minutes south. He had not, it emerged, acted alone. The modification contractor, a company called Mercertal Industrial, based in Calgary, had been operating a scheme in which structural analysis data was selectively adjusted to accelerate approval timelines on high-value contracts. Pemberton had been recruited 2 years earlier and had been provided with, in addition to financial compensation, the kind of access that made the data substitution look like an authorized revision rather than a forgery. A second engineer at a different firm was identified in the course of the investigation. The scheme was larger than anyone had initially understood. None of this was Rowan's concern. Precisely. He answered the questions he was asked and went back to his shift and his Stage 3 inspections and his early mornings and Ellie's sandwiches cut on a diagonal. He was not a detective. He was a mechanic. He had seen something that was wrong and he had said so, and that was the extent of what he had done. He believed this completely, and was surprised to find that other people did not share the belief. It was the 3rd week of November when Sylvie Marchetti came back to Kelowna. She had not announced she was coming. He found out because Glenn told him, with an expression Glenn reserved for information he did not fully understand, that the operations director had asked Rowan to make himself available in the afternoon. When Rowan arrived at the administration building, Sylvie was there, this time in a different borrowed office. This time with only one laptop and a cup of coffee she appeared to have been nursing for some time. She looked like she had slept. That was the main difference. "The 4 aircraft have been cleared for return to service," she said, when he sat down. "Proper repairs, proper analysis, proper data. Vantage's engineering team did the work. Transport Canada has signed off." "Good," he said. "Mercertal Industrial has had its maintenance organization approval suspended pending the criminal investigation. 3 individuals have been charged. Aldrich Pemberton's cooperation with the RCMP has been noted. I saw that in the news." She set her coffee down. "I wanted to tell you something in person." He waited. "When I pulled your name from the 2019 report," she said, "I was looking for someone who understood what they were looking at. I was not expecting." She paused, selecting words with the care of someone accustomed to precision. "I was not expecting someone who also understood why it mattered." Rowan looked at the middle distance. Outside the window, a de Havilland -8 was taxiing for departure, its twin turboprops leaving a faint reverberation in the glass. "There were 230 people on a noon flight to Vancouver," he said, "and then 4 more aircraft after that. It wasn't complicated. To some people it would have been." "To some people," he agreed. She was quiet for a moment. "I've been asked to build a regional safety audit division for Vantage," she said. "Physical inspection focus, working directly with line maintenance teams. The idea is to put experienced field people into the analytical chain, not as assistants to the engineers, but as equals. People who can see what the models miss." He didn't say anything. "I'd like to offer you the position of lead field analyst for the Western Canada region," she said. "It's based in Kelowna, travel involved, maybe 8 to 10 days a month. The salary is substantially different from what you're currently making. The work is the same as what you've been doing for 17 years, except that the findings you generate actually go somewhere." Rowan was quiet for a long time. Outside, the -8 had reached the runway threshold and was holding, waiting for clearance. He watched it without thinking about it. He was thinking about a morning 5 years ago, when his wife, Maureen, who had been a nurse, who had been sensible and precise, and very funny in the particular dry way of people who work with suffering and learn not to be defeated by it, had sat across from him at their kitchen table and told him that the scan results were not good. He was thinking about Ellie, who had been 3 at the time and had not known what the conversation meant, but had climbed into his lap anyway, as if she understood that he needed the weight of her there. He was thinking about what it meant to do a job correctly for 17 years in a place where correctness was not especially valued, and to continue doing it anyway, because the alternative was not something he could live with. 8 to 10 days a month, he said. Sometimes less. Rarely more. My daughter is 8, she's in school here, I know. Your file mentioned a dependent. She'd be with my sister-in-law when I'm away. That's workable. But I need to know that 8 to 10 days is a real number, not a starting position. It's a real number, Sylvie said. I have a son in Montreal. I understand what 8 to 10 days means. He looked at her. She said it without weight, without performance, the way people state facts they have already made peace with. What does the position actually look like? He said. Day to day. You review maintenance records and modification proposals. Both are submitted to Transport Canada. You conduct physical inspections when the data doesn't match the aircraft. You sit in on engineering reviews and you say, out loud, what you see. You write reports that are read by people who will act on them. She paused. Nothing you haven't been doing informally for 17 years, except the reports will have somewhere to go. The -8 on the runway received its clearance and began its takeoff roll, the turboprops rising full power, the airframe lifting cleanly into the October sky and banking north over the lake. Rowan watched it go. I'll need to think about it. he said. Of course, give me a week. Take 2, she said. I'd rather have the right answer than the fast one. He stood up. She stood up as well. They were approximately the same height, he noticed, something he had not paid attention to before, because in their first meeting she had been seated and he had been too focused on the wing spar data to notice anything else. One thing, he said. The report on CFKRW in 2019. The one you mentioned, yes, I filed it because the aircraft was going to fail. That's the only reason. Not because I wanted to make a point. Not because I had something to prove to anyone. I know, she said. I need you to know that before I take any position that puts me in front of engineers and executives. I know, she said again. And the way she said it was different the second time. Not confirmation, but something closer to recognition. The specific look of someone who has spent their career in a field where the truth is treated as a negotiating position, and who has learned to identify, with some care, the people for whom it is not. He picked Ellie up from school that afternoon at 3:15. She came through the gate the same way she always did, scanning for him first, then releasing whatever she had been holding in her face all day. The particular relaxation of a child who has been performing competence since 8:15 in the morning and is finally allowed to stop. She climbed into the truck and said, "What's for dinner?" "Pasta," he said, "with the sauce from the jar or the actual sauce." Actual sauce. She considered this. "Okay," she said, and pulled her seatbelt across her chest and looked out the window at the mountains going amber in the late afternoon light. He drove. After a while, she said, without looking away from the mountains, "You seem different today." Different how? She thought about it. Like you figured something out. He had not told her about any of it. Not the falsified report, not the wing inspection, not the investigation. She was 8. She drew airplanes in her notebooks because she wanted to understand what her father did all day. Maybe, he said. She accepted this answer, which was the thing about Ellie. She understood when an answer was complete and when it wasn't, and she had the patience, uncommon in an 8-year-old and entirely inherited from her mother, to wait for the rest of it later. They drove north through the valley, the lake flat and gray to their left, the town coming up around them, the light coming off the hills in long autumn angles that turned everything briefly gold before the sun dropped behind the ridge and the color went out of the world all at once. He thought about 230 people on a noon flight, about a crack 3 millimeters long that nobody had been meant to find, about a woman in a borrowed office who had known his name from a report he had filed 5 years ago because it had been worth knowing. He thought about Maureen, who would have laughed at the whole thing. Not at the danger, but at the shape of it. The way the one moment you did the right thing for no reason other than that it was right could sit quietly in a file somewhere for 5 years and then walk back into your life wearing a different coat. He turned off the highway and into the neighborhood where they lived. The houses here were modest and close together, with maples going red in the front yards and porch lights already coming on in the early dark. He parked in front of their house. Ellie was already unbuckling her seatbelt. She had moved on from the question of what he had figured out and was now thinking about pasta and, probably, the homework she had told him about this morning, with the specific reluctance of someone who has not started it and is aware that this fact is about to become relevant. She got out of the truck. He got out of the truck. She went up the front steps and waited at the door for him, which she always did, and he thought, not for the first time, not without the particular ache that would probably never go away completely, that she looked like her mother when she stood that way, patient and exact, knowing that he was coming, needing only to be sure. He came up the steps. He unlocked the door. They went inside.